and welcome, everybody, to Accio Politics, a Harry Potter reread podcast focusing on the politics of the series. I'm Helene, your host, producer, and someone who's grateful to have a little time off after the disaster of a year we've had this year.
Hey y'all, I'm Kay Alex, one of your hosts, trying to enjoy the holidays without creating too many to-do lists, as well as not chastise themselves when they spend the entire day watching anime or reading webcomics.
Good, you shouldn't chastise yourself. That sounds amazing. Well, today we have a very special guest joining us. They do an awesome job co-hosting Wizarding World podcasts such as Speak Beasty and Alohomora, and we're so excited to have them back on the show. Welcome, Aureo! Yay!
Hi,
Aureo.
guys.
Hello there.
I've been literally binging this podcast for the past 2 weeks. I'm so excited about all the changes you did to the format, and I'm so terrified about debating you because you're both experts at it.
Oh man, I'm so excited.
Oh yeah, you'll be fine.
We'll see how fast I can speak.
And speaking of debates, but before we get into that, just letting you guys know that we'll be covering Chapter 17 of Harry Potter and the Order of Phoenix, Educational Decree number 24.
This is the chapter where Umbridge posts an educational decree, forbidding all students' organizations, including the Quidditch teams, from meeting again until they receive her approval. Later, the trio meets Sirius for another fire conversation, and he already knows about their secret defense against the Dark Arts group, and encourages them to keep meeting. Their reunion is cut off when Sirius sees Umbridge's hand groping through the flames, attempting to grab hold of Sirius.
Ooh, well, this is the time where we'd like to thank our patrons who make this podcast possible. If you would like bonus content and help keep this podcast going, you can head over to patreon.com/aciopolitics and choose your tier. $2 a month will get you access to bonus content for every episode, and other tiers will get you physical rewards every 3 months. Today, in our bonus Patreon content, since we have a resident Fantastic Beasts expert with us, we're going to discuss some of the politics in the Wizarding World during the Fantastic Beasts series. I think mainly focusing on World War II. Is that correct, Aureo?
Yes, exactly. It's me, so we're talking about World War II. If you know me from Speak Beasty, you know I always bring up World War II.
Well, I, for one, can't wait to hear about it from the perspective of a German, so I'm ready for it.
Oh yeah, definitely sounds intriguing and intense. I guess it's also time for Potter Watch, where we discuss some of the latest news in the United States.
All right, so Potter Watch, what the Ministry doesn't want you to know. I've never gotten to say that. I'm just excited. Adri always does it. So for our Potter Watch today, we are going to be discussing, we have a couple of things, but the first thing we're going to discuss is a J.K. Rowling-esque news story. It turns out that the author was submitted for a 2020 Russell Prize for Best Writing by the BBC for that essay that she released. What was it, at the end of last year? Or was it early this? I can't remember.
This year, it's the one.
Oh, it was this year, right,
The
yeah.
big one that sparked all the big debates.
Was it in June? Time has no meaning, right?
Yeah, I mean, June feels like 2 years ago, but yes, it was
Yeah.
this year.
Literally, I'm so, yeah. Yeah, so her unfortunate, anti-trans essay that she had written and put on her website, which I'm sure it's still there if you have not read it yet and you want to go read it.
Or don't.
Or don't.
Yeah, I mean, you're not missing out.
Yeah, like, stop giving bad writing airtime. Well, I mean, maybe not, because you listen to this podcast too, and there are a lot of people who say that Harry Potter's bad, but never mind.
Not us.
But don't give discrimination and bigotry and I don't even think it's transphobia at this point, because it's like, well, one of the most intriguing points that came up on social media is J.K. Rowling mentioning that had she been born a few decades later, she would probably be contemplating whether or not she was trans herself.
Yeah, that was in the essay. That part pissed me off.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not gonna, as somebody who is very cis het and like not struggle to understand, but like acknowledge the privileges that come wherein. Like, I've never contemplated if I wanted to be a different gender or anything like that. But it's a bigot. Like, she obviously said that from a point of fear and bigotry, but like, it's a point that we like shouldn't ignore. I think about all the time, like how ideologies change from generation to generation to generation.
Mhm.
Like, my grandma's from the silent generation, and of course my dad is a boomer, and then me being a millennial. Like, our politics have changed because our world has changed.
True. Yeah.
But like, it's I don't want to say that it's a solid question, but it's like, it is a point for consideration. Like, but also too, she's a wealthy capitalist who is still making billions of dollars off of several series, as well as, for better or for worse, these essays that target a group of people, which is absolutely for the worst. So it's kind of like, if you truly feel like you had those issues, you could have been done something about it, to be quite honest. And I think that's the one point that people
Yeah.
bring. Like, she has the money to like seek therapy if that's what she needs to do.
Yeah. Well, I think the thing that makes people most angry, especially about that part in her essay where she talks about that, is that she doesn't say it because she suffered from any sort of body dysmorphia. She basically was like she was expressing that it would have been out of convenience because her life could have been easier if she were a boy, and it wasn't because she, as far from what I could infer from the article, it definitely didn't sound like it was because she felt she was born in the wrong body,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
um
And
And
I mean, obviously she's still banking on the convenience of being a man, because she published
mhm,
essays and other books underneath a man's name. Um, who was also a bigot and awfully transphobic and believed in gay conversion therapy. So it's
yeah.
like your bigotry never stops, whether you're a man, woman, or someone else. So sorry, author, you're just shitty.
yeah, and I find like, I mean, the thing that pisses me off most about all of this is that trans organizations have reached out to her to have a conversation, and she's just like, no, 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 I know better. And it's like, maybe you could just listen to the people who have lived through this, who know what it feels like, instead of just saying things that you think are accurate.
Yeah.
Like, if you asked myself at 8 year old if I wanted to be a boy, I would have signed up so quickly. You couldn't like talk to me. I was like, yes, they can like play in the forest and just go pee upstanding. That was like a major benefit. Of course, I wanted to do that. But everyone who's ever looked into transitioning knows that like you need to go, like, you can't get hormones just like that. Most countries will have you see a therapist before they prescribe you hormones. You can't get operations before you're 18. Like, it's not something you decide as a kid.
Yeah, I think Chris Rankin said it really well in our episode with him, where he was like, if you're not willing to listen to the people that you're affecting and learn, then just shut up.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh,
Yeah, I saw a really good quote about that. It's like, never miss an opportunity to shut the hell up.
yeah, I like that. Well, the author of this article that is awarding her this prize for best writing, they said, I take absolutely no view whatsoever on the issues that she raises in her article. But I do take issue on abuse and trolling, and Rowling has achieved the inglorious honor of topping blah 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 blah. That like, and then they said the deluge of hatred that she faced before writing this blog made it brave, and it was nothing compared to what came after. I just wanted to point out that that again falsely equates the online abuse that J.K. Rowling received for writing her essay with the decades-long abuse, both emotional and physical and, societal, that the transgender community has had to endure because of people like her. And the rest of the essay basically applauds her for her use of quote unquote plain English and getting to her points very like succinctly and using words that are one syllable to get her point across.
Yeah, I don't know if you know this YouTuber, but it's a UK trans man. His YouTube handle is Jamie Dodger, and he's fantastic. And he's broken down Rowling's essay, and he's also reacted to this news. And he said, "Trans rights, 2 words, 1 syllable."
Right. Very succinct, very plain English.
Yeah,
Maybe the entire trans community should just win this prize.
exactly.
Oh my goodness. But I mean, that's basically all I have to say on this topic because we've gone over it so many times. But if anybody else has anything to add, feel free. Otherwise, we can move right along.
I'm just gonna quote one of my new favorite writers, and I always say her name so improperly. I don't even want to botch it because but she is the author of 2 great books. So you want to talk about race and mediocre, the dangerous legacy of white male America. So please check both of those books out. But here's the quote that she dropped on my lap the other day.
Yeah, I found a YouTube video of how to pronounce her name, so I just want to see what it is. Ijoma Oluo, I think. Yeah.
I'm gonna learn to pronounce it and then say it. Anyway, she basically tells people do your thing because like white mediocrity gets so many awards and prizes, and it's kind of like, okay, if you're allowed to publish or put out mediocre work because white people have been doing it for so long and they're still getting awards and prizes for it. And even if you put out something that sucks, it's going to be different than what white people are used to. So you may as well do it.
Yeah. I also like mediocre or, sucks or whatever is so subjective that like just because you might think it like you the author or you the creator might think it's not good, that does not mean the people who are going to be consuming the media aren't going to love it. So,
True.
take a chance.
Speaking of taking chances with life in general, as well as falling below the bar of mediocrity, this back and forth with Trump over the COVID relief bill, like
I knew that this was a transition to Trump, but still.
Speaking of mediocrity,
Yeah.
Trump.
I don't think he meets the requirement for mediocrity. I think he's
yeah,
way
I was
below.
just about to say that. Like, it's not even. It's just. You know how some people on this world are just so disgusting, like you don't even want to talk about them. Like you don't want to, like your brain doesn't even want to give them the spare neurons throughout your day.
Yeah, and that feeling has definitely amplified since Joe won the presidency. So yeah, I find myself wanting to talk about Trump less and less.
I like, and the fact that we still have like 3 weeks to go, like people talk about like the timing between after Christmas to like MLK Day being like one of the longest slumps of the year. And it's so true. Especially because we're just like $900 billion. Let's just start there. $900 billion. I'm at a point where $900 would change my outlook on life.
Yeah. What about $600?
I mean, that's my half of the rent, so I'm not gonna lie. That is $600 is literally one month of rent here at my residence in Southfield, Michigan.
Yeah, it's just over half of mine. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely going to help a lot of people. I just know I have to say I am thoroughly enjoying the memes of like here's what you can buy for $600. And there was like one thing where it was like, oh, I can't even afford a coffin for $600, so this stimulus check isn't even going to help me afford to die. And then there was one where it was like, all the parts that would be needed to make a homemade guillotine add up to just about $600. So you can just
Yeah,
make a homemade
that's a.
guillotine for
And then when
$600.
they like, there were articles telling people like alternative methods of what they should do so the bill not be passed. And I, oh, so you're giving us permission to murder and steal? Like,
Yeah, there was one meme where right after Trump was like, no, $600 isn't good enough. Let's give them $2,000, which is just like really, you say this now after they've been fighting over this for months? But there was one meme that was like, it was like, Republicans, we want to give them $600. Democrats were like, how about $2,000? They're like, no. And then it was like, Democrats, how about $1,000? No, $600. And then Democrats, okay, how about $600? And Republicans are like, no, $2,000.
right. And like, so many articles are trying to paint Trump as the good guy who's like waiting for Nancy Pelosi and Congress to just do their job and like make the right decision. And I'm just like, if you truly believe that Trump is suggesting $2,000 out of the goodness of his heart or even out of the originality of his own thoughts, I have several bridges in Brooklyn I can sell you.
Yeah, well, we'll see if this gets figured out in time before Biden's inauguration. And then who knows, maybe once Biden is inaugurated, maybe he'll be able to get a new stimulus passed that's better. And we don't even have to worry about this anymore. We'll see.
It just kind of equates to, I don't know if anybody else has seen the article about how Amazon opposed the bill that was going to raise taxes in Seattle to help the homeless, but then built a homeless shelter in their headquarters and funded it.
No, I hadn't heard about that.
Yes. No, we don't want you guys doing the right thing, but we want us doing halfway of the right thing and getting all the credit for it.
Oh my goodness.
And of course, a tax write-off, because.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be one of those situations where they're like, remember that one time when we did one good thing?
Right.
That's gonna come up for the next 100 years of no. Remember that one time?
I feel, yeah, this is just like giving me flashbacks to Trump wanting to sign all the stimulus checks the first time around.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Because he just, yeah, and he like delayed all the payments because he wanted to make sure his signature was on all of them. So people who like couldn't pay for food had to wait longer because he just wanted to boost his ego. This is the same thing. Like, he just wants the credit. And so if anything, he knows that something good is going to happen. He just wants it to happen under his presidency because he wants it to be
Yeah.
his triumph or whatever, his victory.
He's so childish, honestly.
The worst.
As somebody who works with children, I almost want to give it something below childish.
Oh, okay.
Because my kids can be petty, but like, I'm honest. It's been a long time since I've witnessed a child be as cruel as this man here.
Oh yeah, I mean, this is textbook narcissistic personality disorder. Like, every time he speaks or anything, any news thing comes out about him, it like I flash back to my abnormal psych class. Like, just the chapter on narcissistic personality disorder should have literally just said Trump. That's all it should have said. Well, on that note, let's move on to our Hogwarts debate club. Unless, was there anything else anybody wanted to add?
Not at all.
So I'm going to be going first. Let's hope that this 30-second timer thing works. All right. And I'm starting now. Okay. The politics of wartime casualties. Obviously, I'm not referring to deaths when I say casualties in this chapter because no one dies. But however, casualty can be defined as a person or thing badly affected by an event or situation. And I believe there are a few things like that shown here. Hedwig being injured by Umbridge, Trelawney being put on probation, the Quidditch Gryffindor team, The Gryffindor Quidditch team possibly not being able to reform. All of these are a direct result of Umbridge herself and the Ministry's attempt to take over Hogwarts. Wow, I still have time left?
Will you shut up, man?
Aha! There we go.
I was about
There
to
he
say,
is.
did you turn Joe off?
I was like, oh my god, what if it didn't work? I would be so mad at
I have
myself.
absolutely no clue how many points you can actually fit in, so I'm like, just let's see.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, sometimes I write down like hardly anything, and I feel like I run out of time fast. And then sometimes I write down like a ton, and I'm like, how do I still have time? All right, okay, Alex, let me know when you're ready.
I'm ready.
All right, 3, 2, 1, go.
So I'm here to discuss the politic of community organizing and disbanding. Educational Decree 24 specifically targets the students socializing with one another, prefacing privileges to those who align themselves with Umbridge. This is directly related to slave codes as well as the student organizer groups made throughout the civil rights movement. This is also seen when Hermione chastises Fred and George for trying to gather the students through skiving snack boxes, as well as
shut up, man.
darn it.
Well, we can discuss your last point during the discussion, I'm sure.
For sure.
Oh, good job. Okay, Aureo, I know this is your first time. You're gonna do great. Just let me know when you're ready, and I'll count you down.
Yeah, I think I'm as ready as I'll ever be.
All right. 3, 2, 1, go.
So I'm talking about the politics of espionage. We see a secret society that trains without government knowledge and has measurements to keep members in line and especially finding out who would snitch. The government, on the other hand, comes up with new rules to forbid all clubs. We also see letters being intercepted and read, Harry overhearing the conversation between Snape and Umbridge, Sirius sneaking past authorities and almost being caught while using covert means of communication.
Will you shut up, man?
I almost got through.
You were so close. You and K. Alex both just had 1 point left.
Oh yeah,
Man.
you did really well.
Yeah, that was really good, man. I'm excited to hear what our listeners think about our politics this week.
This is such an adrenaline rush too.
Right?
Oh yeah.
It's fun. It's fun to try, like, yeah, it's a challenge to try and like make sure that you say it succinctly, but also like get your point across at the same time. Woo.
For sure. I like doing the research too.
I see Aureo wrote a ton of notes for our in-depth discussion, but first, what was that last point that you had, K. Alex, that you on your community organizing and disbanding?
And this is a really interesting difference that's not highlighted in the films. Mrs. Weasley urging the trio not to establish any illegal groups versus Sirius, who approves of them starting the DA.
Yeah.
I mean, I get, like, we know from chapters before, like, why Mrs. Weasley is so afraid and, like, why she is so protective of the children, but it's more overt in the books than it is in the films about how she doesn't want them doing anything dangerous and how she, like, puts it in their heads like they're not meant to be involved.
Yeah, I think it's a good example of Mrs. Weasley wanting them to be children when and I think it's honestly kind of ignorant of her because I love Mrs. Weasley. And I love that she wants them to hold on to their innocence and childhood for as long as they can, but I think that it's too late at this, like, like at this point they are in the fight. They're going to be in the fight. They know it. They need to prepare themselves, and I think putting it off is just honestly dangerous. And I don't usually agree with Sirius. I gotta say, Sirius is not my favorite character. I think he's a little too reckless, but I do like the like this. This brings me to this one quote in the chapter where Sirius is like, "I think that you should be." I should look up I have the book right here, but it's something like, "It's better than being in school, like not knowing what's coming."
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's basically that.
Oh, better expelled and able to defend yourself than sitting safely in school without a clue. I opened it directly to that page and saw it, so that was actually kind of helpful.
It's also interesting to me, and I noticed happens more after this chapter, that Hermione then changes her opinion because Sirius is all for it.
Right, yeah, this, reminded me of, killed or worse, expelled. Now she's like, "Nope, I have my priorities straight finally. I'd rather be expelled than killed."
And I think the question of should children be involved in politics, both in the books and even in, our own society, goes back and forth. And we see examples both in the books and in our society where children have had to take charge and lead revolutions and whistle blow on inequities and injustices in the world. And you have one side of the world that are good for them, this is the generation that needs to do that, this is great that we're getting another generation of people that are starting to really see the light and are pushing for things that we've been battling for decades. And then there are people that are like, no, we shouldn't have to bring our children to protest. We shouldn't have to have our children on the front line. We shouldn't. And I think too, because the wizarding age of adulthood is so much younger. Most people will say 18, but really in the United States, you're not really an adult until you're 21. So 17 is actually quite young. And to see Hermione and Harry and Ron at 14 and 15, well, 15 now, having to settle into making these adult decisions.
I think in this conversation I recently had with my dad, actually, it's something, it depends on the situation. We have everywhere around the world now, I suppose, at least in the Western civilizations, the Friday for Futures movements. And that is literally children stepping up and making points, raising awareness because the politics are failing them and because they are the generation that have to live through it, and our generation as well. And because the politicians are thinking in shorter spans of time, they're like, yeah, 4 years, then election, and that I'll focus what I can get done in 4 years. And climate change is not something you can fix in 4 years. So there's the almost how severe is the situation, and especially in 2020, what has happened around the world, but especially in America with the Black Lives Matter movement, how the situation is so bad that it's not sort of a choice, it's just you need to. And I think a lot of people would say they just feel the need to step up. Same with climate change, but obviously people are not being gassed at climate change.
People aren't. Yeah. People are dying, but definitely not in the same circumstances.
Yeah, and they're not gassed at standing up at Friday for Future, there's no one shooting at them or anything. Whereas that has happened at Black Lives Matter movements. So I think it's more sort of a thing where they feel the need to step up, and not where I don't think anyone's pushing them other than their own interest for the most part. But it's something, and especially here in the books, Harry, Ron, and Hermione. I mean, Harry's directly involved because Voldemort wants to kill him. They can't even choose to not participate in a way because they have to.
It's not a choice anymore, which is another reason why I think that Mrs. Weasley really needs to get her act together and start supporting this, because they don't really have a choice.
The lack of awareness about how desperate the situation really is was kind of it was just weird, because it's you usually think people usually often portray moms as being aware of everything, aware of most, but
mothers know all.
But maybe knowing all is not the same thing as knowing best.
I think mothers also always want the best for their child, and obviously participating in a war or in the pre phase of a war is not what any mother would wish on their child.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. I know, when my brother had just moved to Kentucky, when the Ahmad Arbery case happened. And it's like she was like panicked because she was like, your brother likes to go running and he doesn't know anybody. And like, we would never get down there in time if something happened between him and a white person or between him and police. Like, we don't have any emergency contacts there. Even for me at 30 to see my mom, like, who's usually like really empowered and really forthright and really, you know, she just taught us to stand up for ourselves and to fight for what's right. Like, to see her so scared and to see her so panicked at even the possibility of something like that happening to him, it like sobered me for a bit. Like,
Yeah.
because they've talked about, like, of course they've given us the talk, and we talk about politics and race relations and even, their history of like living through the Detroit and the Chicago riots and, uh, just other events and like, of course, several presidencies at this point. But like, to see them still panicked about what could happen to their children, even with us being adults, it's like, oh, that fear, that anxiety never stops.
Yeah, I mean, I know I've been kind of harsh on Miss Weasley because of this in this chapter, but at least one pro I can give her is at least she admitted that she doesn't have control over Harry and Hermione's decisions, and basically was like, I'm telling Ron he can't, but I can't tell you guys you can't. So I'm just wanting to remind you that I have your best interests at heart, which at least is a plus in her column for me, because at least she can admit that she doesn't have control over these people who are not her children.
I almost think that she doesn't entirely know, like she isn't 100% sold on they shouldn't do it, because I think if she really wanted to, she would have been able to switch guard shift with someone and be there to tell them directly.
That is true.
I think like she doesn't want them to do it, but I think she also knows she first of all won't stop them doing it, and that she probably understands why they want to do it. Because let's face it, we know stories about Mrs. Weasley being out of hours because she was on a late night walk with Arthur during her Hogwarts days. It's not like she was a goody two shoes.
One of your politics, Aureo, I really want to talk about, and it's because like my group of friends and I talk about this a lot, especially when it comes to the inner workings of who is now Black Hermione. Measurements to keep members in line and know who snitched. I was like, and it's been a while since I've done a reread of the book, so like this is why I was like, because people are still adamant that nobody knew what Hermione had done. And now we have canonized proof that both Ron and Harry knew exactly what she did, and one of them told her that she was wrong.
Yeah. I mean, as I've read this book the first time when I was probably like 13, 14, I was like, Hermione's a genius. Of course she should do this. Now, like as a 28-year-old, I'm like, this violates some rights here. Maybe that's not the best way to do it.
I think this definitely highlights that, like the fact that she is a 15-year-old, like this is something that a child would see as a really good idea and very good justice. And I'm not saying she's wrong per se, but as an adult, she probably would have handled it differently.
Oh yeah, I mean, like people who know me know like Hermione's like one of my favorite characters. Like I see a lot of myself in her, which is why like at first I defended this decision like with so much passion. Like because it's like, okay, anybody who especially if we're going underneath the premise of Hermione being Black, the paranoia that one of your allies will sell you out to benefit themselves is very high. When you look at a lot of organizations like Democratic Socialists, or I mean, you know, people swear, but like Antifa is not an organization, guys, but
Someone should tell Trump.
but like when you think about community organizing, there happens to be a lot of infighting. There happens to be a lot of dismantling from the inside because people cannot come into, because when it comes down to it, people are going to do what's in their better natures to satisfy themselves, like to push their own agendas. And while I could have looked at it from that perspective of, okay, Hermione anticipated being betrayed, it still doesn't justify what we know eventually is going to happen to this girl's face.
I see. I think that okay. I think that where I've landed is that I think this was okay. Like this was okay to do, with one caveat, is that A, it would have been more effective, and B, it would have been more moral if she had told people.
Yeah.
Like if she had said, "Okay, guys," even if they said, even if it was after they signed the sheet, you know, like not before, because if you said it before, people would be like, "Well, I'm not signing that." It was like, well, then she has no way of making sure people don't tell, right? But after
Well, if she had said it after, if she had said it after, it would have been like, it would have been under false pretenses. It would have been like she duped them into signing.
well, I mean,
I'd
she
rather
did.
have people, but like,
But wouldn't you rather they know than not know? Like now, she did that already, but they don't know.
well, I still think that if she had told people what she had done before and Marietta had not signed, then it would have been like, okay, no harm, no foul. Like you're not equipped to be in a group like this because this is, you know, this ain't for play. Like this, and that's the thing too. Like people getting me and my friends and I, the people at Black Girls Create, they push me so hard, and I love them for this. But we talk about all the time whether or not Dumbledore's army was a war faction group or was it just a club? Like, was it just a student organization? And for a lot of the kids, it was just that. It was just to learn the defensive spells. It wasn't like they were trying to get involved with fighting against the ministry or pushing back against a political agenda. It was literally that they wanted to learn something that they weren't learning in class, that they knew that they should have been learning.
Mm-hmm.
I also feel like if you were going to the DA under the premise that it was just going to be some after school tutoring group, you're a fool.
Yeah. I mean, either way, telling them would have been helpful at whatever step in the process. Then they would have known that there was this potential consequence, and it also might have scared them into not telling. And Marietta Edgecombe may have not told if she knew that she was going to get this horrible thing on her face.
I wonder if it would have been a good point in time to do it at their first official meeting in the room of requirement, when they officially vote Harry to be leader and all of that stuff. They could have been like, obviously we're like operating under secrecy now, and therefore it comes without saying that no one snitches, and just so you know, if you do, there will be repercussions.
Yeah, definitely. I think that would have been the right way to go about it.
And then something maybe very controversial, breaking the fourth wall a bit. Do we think Rowling needed that to happen to get Dumbledore out of the situation with Fudge? Do we think we needed that Marietta is refusing to talk?
Yes. I think because Dumbledore is first and foremost, like, first and foremost the headmaster of Hogwarts. And despite all of his flaws, Dumbledore knows, like, on a surface level, he has to be there for the students. Yeah. I think they needed to demonstrate how the students themselves realize now what they're fighting against head on, and the choices that they make doing so. And I think that without that, it would have been less. There wouldn't have been any sign of dissent within the school.
Yeah, but I think I specifically meant when they find out when Marietta snitches and they're all in Dumbledore's office, and they want to question her and she refuses to talk, and that's when they confront her, and she just like nods and shakes her head, and that's essentially what ensures that Harry isn't blamed for everything and Dumbledore takes the blame.
Oh.
So I'm just wondering if Rowling needed something to happen so Marietta wouldn't just outright say what happened.
Yeah, probably. I'm not exactly sure if it needed to be like disfiguration,
Yeah.
because that's a bit much. But yeah, probably something. I don't know. This is just like another perfect example of when the rare times we get to see Hermione willing to go a little too far, like with Rita at the end of Goblet of Fire, maybe a
Yeah,
little
that's
too
also
far.
insane.
See,
I
like
hope she
Hermione,
kept that people.
yeah. Hermione is always willing to go just a little too far.
I mean, I suppose I would have been more okay with the like change on the face would have lasted like a week, a day, I don't know, and then
Yeah.
just went away again. Like give you enough of a scare and then it's all good again.
I mean, I think it really just shows how seriously Hermione is taking all of this, and I do think she's taking it more seriously than anyone else in the trio for sure. Which it's good to see her taking it seriously because she's the brains behind the operation, but it's just such a stark difference, like that comparison I made earlier of first book Hermione versus now. The things that she's willing to sacrifice, the things she's willing to do for this cause that she kind of had to be pushed like into originally.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's character development, right? You love to see it.
Yeah. I think it's probably also one of the main lessons she took from Chamber of Secrets is like just because someone's a teacher doesn't mean they're right.
Right, yeah. And it's something that probably Percy could have really learned a lesson from as well. Just because someone's an authority doesn't mean that they're right. And Hermione learned it early on, and unfortunately, Percy learned it a little late in life.
Yeah, which is interesting. Wouldn't Percy be in his year 6 during Lockhart? So on his way to his NEWTs?
Possibly.
Shouldn't he be like very concerned about school and good teachers?
You would think so. I would actually probably be interested in reading like a story from his perspective of like the formative years of Hogwarts.
Yeah. So it's all very interesting to me because we have the like as we follow Harry's perspective, we have the good DA teachers in book 3, 4, and essentially even 6 because Snape does know what he's talking about. But book 1 and 2, both teachers are not really good. But it doesn't impact Harry because he's in the first 2 years, so there's no major tests. But other
True.
people were in year 5, 6, and 7, so.
That is true. Yeah. Something to think about. Were there, let's see, you had a couple of other notes. Was there something specific you wanted to touch on from your notes for the chapter discussion, Aureo?
I just sort of clustered my notes as I took them going through, just so I don't forget anything. I think something that stood out to me is that there's a lot of themes of like fighting against the establishment.
Mm-hmm.
And I pulled out a quote from Trelawney when she has her like hissy fit, for lack of better words, when she's put on probation. And she specifically says the establishment. said Professor Trelawney in a deep, dramatic, wavering voice. Yes, those with eyes too clouded by the mundane to see as I see, to know as I know. Of course we see as have always been feared, always persecuted. It is, alas, our fate. But there is its outright said that it's like we're fighting against the establishment, because that's what the BA is essentially doing.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me that someone like Trelawney would call them the establishment.
No, she's dramatic enough to do it.
Yeah,
Like-
and also too, like, despite what Hermione, thinks about Professor Trelawney as, Harry brings to her attention, she's not being targeted for like a lack of curriculum, like she's not being targeted for being a bad teacher. You know what I'm saying? Like, at least not under traditional standards. Like, I mean, before Umbridge, Hogwarts really didn't even have any standards about what makes a good teacher and what doesn't. Like,
true.
Yeah, which is shocking.
It's not like there's a set of standards that Trelawney isn't living up to or isn't. It's not like she's failing the kids. It's more to the point of, I think Umbridge kind of knows, like, almost any quote unquote, well, I won't say any good bully, but any bully that's hip to their methods of bullying can kind of look at who they can bully and who they can't.
Yeah.
Because we see, like, Umbridge's approach with each teacher goes totally different based on their personalities. Like, she just bombards Trelawney with a whole bunch of questions to the point that she gets flustered, and she starts to lose her control on things. Umbridge would never be able to do that to McGonagall.
And we do see her with Snape in that same chapter, and she treats Snape very differently too.
Oh, yeah. And I think too, when you have also faced real cruelty, somebody being petty to you doesn't bother you. Especially now that we know about what we know about Snape and like his roles, or however we want to look at it. It's like Umbridge is the smallest of Snape's problems.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the bully being like, give me all your lunch money, and you don't have any lunch money.
Which is still interesting because Snape is a bully himself.
Oh, for sure. And that's also why the exchange is so humorous, because it's like, you can't bully me, woman.
Yeah, like you have no effect on me at all. I could care less about what you do or say. Just get out of my sight.
It's kind of like the inverse of how she treats McGonagall, because it's like McGonagall is like, you may as well be a fly in a jar.
And McGonagall could transfigure her into a fly.
Yes.
And she probably should have.
And Snape is like, it wouldn't even be worth the energy of turning you into a fly. You'd still be buzzing around my ear, so what would be the point?
Right. Yeah, I definitely, speaking of that part of the chapter, I mean, I don't think there's anyone in the world who can read his obviously without reading it in Alan Rickman's voice.
Oh, absolutely. Like, at this point, it's like Alan Rickman is Professor Snape. Like that.
Man, well, is there anything else that we really wanted to touch on, or should we move on to Dementors and Chocolate?
I think tiny point here is
yeah, go ahead, definitely.
The students still need to learn how to be secretive, because immediately after the degree is passed, everyone's like, let's meet in the Great Hall in front of all the teachers and talk about this. It's not going to be soft at all.
That was so funny. And it gives you a really great Jenny part in this chapter too, where she's like, I'm going to go talk to Michael. God, that fool, honestly. Like,
yeah, 14 and 15 is not, in terms of.
I do wonder if it would have been different if they had Slytherins in their group. if the Slytherins would have been, look, guys, we can tell you how to be secretive and sneaky.
That's true. Maybe they could have added a valuable skill.
Yes.
I would have liked to have seen a good Slytherin in there, a couple of them. That would have been nice.
In general, in the series, it would have been nice if they wouldn't all have been the worst.
It's true.
We really don't get impartial Slytherins until about book 6, book 7. Really, book 6.
When do we get impartial Slytherins?
Like Blaze the Beanie, because he was the only Slytherin in Slughorn's club.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not sure if he's the only one, but he's definitely in the Slug Club. Wasn't there like a pair of twins that's also Slytherin?
They were in the films, but I don't think they were in the books.
Yeah, I can't wait to reread Half-Blood Prince.
And it's kind of a it's a discredit to the author's writing, because it would have been nice to have seen, as the Sorting Hat has hinted several times, all 4 houses come together to stand for something.
Right, yeah.
For the battle. And I think that's why people are so adamant in talking about there were no Slytherins that fought in the battle, even though there were, because the battle is the only time that you see Slytherin actually step up for the good of Hogwarts.
Yeah, I definitely think it would have sent a good message to have a Slytherin in there here and there, and especially in the DA, it would have been really nice to see that representation. And like Aureo said, they definitely probably would have helped them not be as stupid as just running around gathering in the Great Hall after Educational Decree number 24 is posted.
Yeah, and it also would have been a great time to highlight the exceptions for each house.
Yeah.
This is the book where we get Zachariah Smith.
Ugh.
And he's not by any means he's like peak opposite. He's like peak burnt Hufflepuff, Like,
yeah.
Like looking at him, you're like, how did this kid get into Hufflepuff? Like,
yeah. Exactly. And speaking of exceptions, this gives me a chance to make a small correction from the last episode. I was wrong and said that Michael Corner is a Hufflepuff, and I'm pretty sure he's a Ravenclaw.
Yes, yes.
I feel like I read this chapter and I was like, oh crap, I'm pretty sure I said he was a Hufflepuff in the last episode. Sorry, everybody. I'm sure you're all yelling at your phone saying, he's not in Hufflepuff. So sorry about that. But also exceptions in the fact that Ginny calls him a fool and he's a Ravenclaw.
Yes,
so
exactly. Yeah, it's like, oh, we've got a dumb Ravenclaw in the group. And we've got this unkind Hufflepuff. So it would have been nice to have seen a Slytherin that wasn't so self-serving or wasn't so weighed down in the pressures of being privileged and biased.
Yeah.
And the way I could see a Slytherin coming in would have been through Luna, because she would have not been biased enough from the get-go to shut a Slytherin out of her life if said Slytherin was nice enough to her. She would have been,
for sure.
This one in my year was actually interested, and then there would have been a whole debate between the three. I was like, but he's from Slytherin. And Luna would be like, no, he's cool. Or he's cool.
I would have loved to see that.
And that still would have made sense because Luna is also pure blood.
Yeah.
Man, I would have loved to see that. I wish we could get the book rewritten just to have that part added in.
Let's just do it ourselves.
Fanfic. Is there fanfic out there that has a Slytherin in the DA? Because that's...
Ooh, maybe that could be our question this week.
What? Should there have been a Slytherin in the DA?
Yes.
Maybe. I mean, I hope most people would say yes. We'll see when we get to there, because I think Aureo actually wrote down a good question too, so we can discuss that when we get there, because there are some good options.
Okay. For sure.
All right. We ready to move on to Dementors and Chocolate now, or anything else?
I just also see 3 points that I wanted to very quickly. 2 of them brought up by Aureo. Hermione still knitting for the house elves, which I also think is a part of community organizing and community disbanding. 2, Ron and Harry not being able to enter the girls' dormitory.
Yeah, that was great.
I mean, we could take that to a whole old-fashioned gender view debate, but
Right, because the fact that Hermione can go into the boys' dormitory because she's apparently more
Well,
trustworthy.
she
yeah.
even says in the chapter, like, "Oh, it's kind of an old-fashioned rule. They just thought girls were more trustworthy, I guess." Which, I mean, I wouldn't fully disagree with that. But that's just the feminist in me, I guess.
Yeah. It's just that reminds me so much of the stupid point of then any man can go into female bathroom. I'm like, yeah, nothing's stopping them now. Nothing will stop them ever to do that. Like
That's
I've
true.
never gone to a toilet that had a security guard.
Yeah. Yeah, well, the castle protects itself from men going into female dormitories, but Harry and Ron go into the female bathroom very easily multiple times in both the first and second books. So,
Yeah.
Right.
And disguising themselves in said bathroom. I mean, to other
Yes.
guys, but still.
yes, true.
Also, which brings up my third point, that one of the few instances of positive gender flip is Mundungus disguising himself as a witch to
Yeah.
spy or to protect Harry, and
Yeah.
not made into this big deal. It's not like,
Yeah.
it's not twisted into a joke or,
Yeah,
you know,
she didn't like make any snide remarks about it in the writing.
yeah.
Yeah, it was handled pretty well, I think. Yeah.
It's like, oh, you can mention these things and not be a bigot. Who knew?
Yes. Small nugget of I don't know, not praise, but appreciation. I don't know. That it was
Yeah, it was definitely the bar is in hell, like bare
yeah.
minimum.
Yeah.
But like
Could have been
the
worse.
fact, yeah, the fact that she like was able to, and maybe that's a part of like the espionage part. It was like, oh, it's being done for something useful. Is being, which I mean, again, identity itself is useful. Like it shouldn't be because we're protecting Harry. But I just appreciate the fact that it wasn't tainted with transphobia.
Totally agree. Well, okay, Alex, what was your Dementor for this chapter?
I really didn't want to have to come for my girl, but like as a teacher, Hermione saying that Fran and George's businesses ideas are useless was like really harsh and like absolutely unfounded as well. And it was very much tinged with like academic elitism versus entrepreneurial spirit. It was very much like old worldly teacher telling you like, oh, you should do something productive, like you should do something traditional. And obviously, like Fred and George have a market, they have a clientele, and they're obviously like they're great students who have found something else to do with their talents. And I think that should be the goal of a lot more teachers and students at school than it is currently.
And isn't it Harry that even points out that he doesn't understand why they only got so few OWLs?
Yeah.
And Hermione being, oh, it's all flashy and stuff. But I think that's also a point of school grades aren't everything. Some people don't do well on tests and they still will know stuff.
Yeah, and I think this is a good example of Molly showing through in Hermione. Like she's being very Molly-esque right now with what she's saying, and I just want to say, Ron marries his mom, so.
Oh my gosh, you just had to remind me.
It's okay because like Harry also somewhat marries Ron's mom, so.
Oh.
Well,
No.
That just got awkward on a whole new level.
It's very people do tend to be attracted to people who remind them of their parents. Unfortunately, I'm the psychology major here, and that is honestly a sad truth. It's not sad. It's just a truth, you know.
God, I love my mother and father, but please hear me. Just don't.
And on that awkward note, Aureo, what's your Dementor?
Well, in pure Speak Beasty fashion, I picked animal stuff for both my Dementor and my chocolate. Umbridge injuring Hedwig is my Dementor because
oh yeah, like
poor Hedwig.
Hate her.
And the way that like, and this is actually some of like JK's best writing is the interactions between Harry and Hedwig, because at like Hedwig is like a little baby, and it's like she's injured and she like wants Harry's attention, and she's and for the most part, like Hedwig is written as like very headstrong and very confident in her abilities and like just very aware of herself. And to see her like actually need Harry for once,
yeah,
it was like heartbreaking.
Yeah. And like a lot of people, I know I don't know if I'm in the minority here, but I feel like I am, that like Hedwig's death hit me really hard, harder than Dobby's death, I would say, in Deathly Hallows. And a lot of people are like, "Oh, why? It's just like his owl." But it's like it's moments like this, you get to see them bond and you see how much Hedwig means to him, and he immediately is like, "Oh my god, she's hurt. I have to go make sure that I get her help immediately." And he cares about her well-being, and it's just so cute. I love them.
I have a theory that most people who are not affected by Hedwig's death have never had a pet or have lost a pet.
Maybe.
I was gonna say the same thing. We lost our first dog to cancer this year.
Oh.
I was like devastated. Like
Right.
there are companions in so many ways, and like their emotional learning and the bond that you create with your pet is like none other. Especially like Hedwig was not only like the first gift that Harry receives to show that like somebody loves and cares for him, but Hedwig is also one of the things that like proves that Harry is a wizard.
Yeah, it's his one tie to the wizarding world during the summers when he's at the Dursleys.
Yeah, and people forget that you have so many small but often very fond memories of your pets. They're just there every day in your life. It's just a big impact if you lose them.
Yes, absolutely.
And Umbridge injuring his pet, like if Umbridge came and hurt my cat, I would literally murder her. Like
and that's what's also crazy. Like this cat lover could not draw the line at animal cruelty.
Right.
Who raised you?
It's a great question. Anyway, yeah, no, Umbridge sucks. But you know who else sucks in this chapter? Freaking Malfoy. I know that it doesn't play a huge part in this, but my Dementor is Malfoy's ableist bullshit.
And reading that part, I was absolutely horrified.
Yeah.
Like I was like, we really miss a lot of things when we are children. Because like reading that now at 30, I was like, what the entire fuck?
Yeah, no, he is sitting there making fun of people with with mental disorders and people who he's being an ableist asshole right now. And it enraged me. And you definitely don't notice these things as a kid when you're reading it, at least unless you like Neville, that you're personally impacted by it, you probably would notice it. But as a kid, if you didn't have a personal connection, you might have just glossed over that.
Yeah, it's especially for like mental conditions. Like, of course, if if Neville's parents had been like physically paralyzed, you know what I mean? Like in a wheelchair or
Yeah.
on crutches and I think that that's even the crueler part too. It's because we know like that their bodies are fine and it's their minds that have been impacted. And because the wizarding world does such a horrible job with even talking about mental health.
Yeah.
I think that comes down to our world being not very good at talking about mental health, and it's often glossed over as in, yeah, but that's just in your head, sort of thing.
Yeah. Like, but if we take a poll about whether or not the wizarding world is a reflection of our own world, people are going to be like, it's just fiction. It's just fantasy. There's no
Yeah. I mean,
need to bring politics into it.
yeah. I mean, he's basically one step away from using the R word, and it wasn't really even until more recent history. I want to say maybe like the 90s or early aughts that word became taboo to use when referring
Oh,
to people with mental
later.
disorders.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Still.
And I just want to say I personally have a connection because my brother is very low functioning autism. He can't like speak. He lives in a group home. He can speak, but he can't speak in full sentences. And so these types of things, it did like affect me personally, and I just like I'm with Neville on this one, and I'll get to that in my in my chocolate. Um, but yeah, it's real. It's a real thing. It's awful.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that was not cool. But, and I know I keep coming back to him because now his cruelty lives in my head rent free. Malfoy's face reminded me, the description of Malfoy's face reminded me so much of Trump that I threw the book down and got mad.
Yeah, yeah. Again, when in at the beginning during his campaign in 2015 or whatever, when he
Yeah.
mocked the physically disabled reporter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was awful.
Just anyway, chocolate.
Yes. On to
Chocolate.
happier things, please.
It's really hard to because like we go back and forth on Professor Gerbly Plank and like her role and supposed to being like this better version of Hagrid and like supposed to be the sign that there is a care of magical creatures teacher that is like good at what they do without putting the children in immediate danger. But the fact that she immediately jumps to Harry's aid to help with Hedwig, despite knowing like Harry just kind of out of loyalty prefers Hagrid, that to me was not only just a sign of a good teacher, but just a sign of a decent person.
Yeah, I don't think there's any actual canonical reason to dislike Grubbly Plank now that I'm like rereading through the books.
No, there's zero.
No,
Zero. She is the better teacher.
no.
Hagrid has no right to teach if she is an option. Like, literally.
I'm going to push back against that a little bit because I also think that has a little bit of ableism in it, and it has a lot to do with academic bias as well. Like Hagrid is just more hands-on as a teacher, and considering the fact that he was expelled from Hogwarts, the fact that he is able to deliver a course on how to care for magical creatures.
See, my counter argument is that in year 4, like for half the school year, they do Blast and it's good. It's not like they cover a lot of ground in that year.
I would also say that classes were not at the forefront of year 4 anyway. Like they were more focused on the tournament than they were on anything else.
Yeah, I mean, I guess yeah, he does at least include an aspect of Blast and his Roots in every single lesson, but do we know that he didn't teach about anything else on top of that?
He only does once it's only one left. That's when they move on to other
But
Well,
I also think that Hagrid tried in his way, in his very fatherly way, to prepare Harry for something that he knew he was going to see in quote unquote real life is another mark of a great teacher. And two, just because Grebley Plank is Umbridge, I think this is where we kind of get into like our own school experiences, like if Hagrid is Hagrid isn't really any different than Miss Frizzle, except he's a man, and he's a giant, and he got expelled from school,
and
you
he
know.
doesn't have a magic school bus.
And in all the instances that people were like, "Oh, Hagrid put the kids in immediate danger," most of them are most of the kids are put in danger when they didn't listen to Hagrid's instructions in the first place.
Oh, that's not my point of why I think Hagrid isn't a good teacher. I think he just doesn't have a curriculum or is organized or cares about which ones they need to learn to pass the tests,
I like Hagrid.
which I think should be a concern for a teacher.
Well, then that would be that would be the case for almost the entire Hogwarts curriculum, because there really isn't one besides textbooks. If we're going to mark a good teacher with only the standard of whether or not they prepare you for a standardized test, then we have an entire failure.
Oh no, I'm not saying that's all they should cover, but that should at the very least be covered. Because let's face it, that test will open you doors for the next chapter in your life.
Well, I mean, are there really a lot of chapters with past education, past Hogwarts in the wizarding world? I mean, it's either you work for the ministry or you become a teacher. Like or you play Quidditch or you run a shop on Diagon Alley.
I think that it helps that Hagrid is very passionate about what he is teaching. And I think that while he doesn't have, formal teaching experience, neither do half the teachers at Hogwarts. And I think he does a good job for what he's given. And while Professor Grubbly-Pink is a, more, I want to know,
Traditional.
traditional accepted teacher, I think she does a good job. I do think that the kids get a little bit more from Hagrid's passion about the subject. Like, if you think about it, would Newt necessarily be a good teacher? Maybe not in the traditional sense, but I would still want to take a class on magical creatures from him because he's passionate about it, you know?
Yeah. And even if we look at other subjects too, the more passionate the teacher was, the more kids enjoyed the class. Like Slughorn was more passionate about potions than Snape, and the kids actually learned to make potions adequately. Lupin gave them the most hands-on DA lesson that they had ever had. And that's what causes Harry to pass his exams.
Yes.
He gets a higher score than Hermione, who's more used to memorization and textbook learning. So it's kind of like kids actually do need that hands-on experience, and they need that passion, and they need that those out of the box experiences to help them remember the material.
Yeah. Not saying that Professor Grubbly-Pink wasn't passionate about it. She probably was, but
No, I can tell, like, the way that she jumped to help Hedwig, she's obviously passionate about animals in general, for sure.
yeah.
But she's not she's she's only listed as the better teacher because she's quote unquote safer.
Yeah. Well, speaking of animals, let's it's a great debate. I love hearing all of the different parts of it, but I also want to hear what Oreo's chocolate is. So, why don't you tell us?
Oh, so mine is like a very, very, very tiny moment. It's when they speak to Sirius in the fire, and it says Crookshank is trying to get closer to Sirius without getting burned. And it's just so cute. Maybe I just miss my cat a lot because my cat lives with my parents in Germany and I'm in the UK, and it's just been Christmas. But yeah, I just thought it was very cute.
Yeah, I definitely, when I was reading that, I was like, oh no, I hope he doesn't accidentally burn himself. Yeah, that was super adorable.
Absolutely.
My chocolate goes along with my Dementor, but it is Neville trying to punch Draco's lights out for his ableist bullshit. I just loved
Period.
I loved seeing Neville stand up for himself, like even though most people don't know that's what he's doing, because they don't know the context of why he's angry. But I love him, just being not taking the bullshit. He's like, "Hey, that's not cool. Shut up. I'm gonna hurt you. I'm gonna punch you." And yeah, I usually don't think that we should be solving our problems with violence, but in this case, I was definitely rooting on Neville.
No, for sure. And I think this is a sign too, because like of Neville's growth as a character and just as a young person in general. Like in years prior, he's needed outside encouragement to stand up to Malfoy and to stick up for himself. And now he's doing it unprompted. Now it's like,
Well, Ron told him he's worth 12 of Malfoy
True.
in year
yeah.
one.
Hell yeah.
But in year one and in year two, like Neville has always been very unsure of his value and of his worth and like of what he believed. And like now in years 3 and in year 4, and especially now in year 5, it's like, no, I know who I am. I know what I believe in. I know what my family stands for, and I'll beat your ass. like it's an inner working glow up. I mean, yes, we can all talk about how hot Matthew Lewis got throughout the series, but I think we can be proud of like how much stronger and how braver Neville got throughout the series as well.
Yes, we definitely get a nice little glimpse of Deathly Hallows Neville in this, and I love it.
In the whole book, really, because he starts learning defense really fast once the Death Eaters break out, which is still ahead for you guys.
Yes, yeah, and he joins them at the Ministry at the end of the book, which is super brave in itself. So go Neville.
Absolutely. Last week, we posed the following question. Why do you think the Death Eaters were not successful in their goals during the absence of Voldemort as their leader? Oh.
Well, we got so many wonderful answers, and we've edited them down a little bit for time, but we wanted to give you all a shout out. So Ash Nicole 516 on Instagram said, the most loyal ones were in Azkaban, and the rest were either dead or trying to blend in and not get caught, so they had to stop. I think that's a really good point.
Yeah. I'd also add that, it's much more comfortable that way.
Yeah.
My _S2_NM and Danny Corn with 3 R's on Instagram both said it was because they are cowards, with Danny Corn adding, also, what were their goals?
I think it's a valid question.
Absolutely. And finally, Danny Schwarnes. I'm sorry, I totally botched that. I know I did. Forgive me. On Twitter said, because good things never wants a leader or hope, but bad things is always waiting for a hope or leader.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. In our talk about grassroots movements, it's true that the people who are looking towards a leader, those movements tend to not be successful, which is why this question came up in the first place, because groups that are motivated by fear tend to always have someone that they fear the most, someone that they follow out of fear, and when that person is gone, their movement kind of crumbles. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
And speaking of movements, Aureo, do you want to talk about this week's question?
Yeah. So the question we have for you guys this week is following up something we've talked about a bit in the main discussion, and we were wondering, what could having a Slytherin member have brought to the Dumbledore's army? Let us know what you think. Tell us all your fanfic ideas of how they could have entered the DA, and what they could have brought to it.
Yes, reach out to us on social media at Acchiopolitics on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and email us at info@acchiopolitics.com or acchiopolitics@gmail.com. And on to media we've been consuming / plugs. Aureo, what media have you been consuming, and what would you like to plug this week?
I have been reading a book called Loveless by Alice Oseman, who is, I think, the same age as you, Helene, and has published like 5 books. So,
Way to make me feel inferior. Goodness.
I mean, I'm a year older than you, and I've also published 0 books. So.
Oh my goodness.
She's from the UK, and she's an Arrow Ace. She's out as Arrow Ace, and I'm also Arrow Ace. For people who don't know what I'm talking about, that stands for if you're aromantic and asexual. And I particularly like this book so much because it follows the lead character in their first year of uni, finding out that they are also Arrow Ace. And there's a lot of other queer characters around her. Her best friend is gay. Another friend comes out as pansexual. There's a non-binary character. There's another asexual character. So it's a very good learning piece if you're not really sure about that stuff. There's a ton of Harry Potter references throughout it. And it's just, for me, as someone who is Arrow Ace, it's just very cool to read about how it feels to be Arrow Ace, described to people who just don't feel the same way as I do, and just being like, yeah, that's 100% how I feel, but just, in better words than I could have ever described it.
That's so interesting. Do you think it's given you like tools to help you better explain it to people?
Oh, 100%. And I've been recommending this book so much already to my friends and being like, you need to read this, seriously.
That's amazing.
Sounds like a good book.
Yeah. And it looks like you have a plug too.
Yeah, so you've already said I'm a host on Speak Beasty and Alohomora, so obviously plugging this, but I wanted to specifically plug this new sort of sub-podcast we have within Alohomora that's called Full Circle and discusses ring theory. There are like 3 main episodes that discuss the big rings, so book 1 and 7, book 1, 4 and 7, book 2 and 6, and book 3 and 5.
And you're gonna be on what, book 4 with Kat?
Yes.
That's exciting.
So we now have done the books in themselves. So Kat, the last remaining founding host of the Alohomora podcast, has started this project, and she picked one person to do a book with her, and I've been lucky enough to do book 4 with her, and it's been such an amazing experience. And you learn so much about the books that you didn't know yet, even though, let's face it, we've all read the books way too many times. And there's still stuff to learn. So yeah, if you're into rereading Harry Potter, and chances are that you are because you're listening to this reread podcast, go check it out.
Yeah, I got to listen to the very first episode because it is a Patreon only podcast, right? So you have to have a special pledge to the Alohomora Patreon to listen to it.
Yes, but I think Kat said she would release 1 episode per book for free.
Right.
So people could check it out and see if it was for them.
Yes, I've heard the first episode of the first book with she does the first book with Eric Skull of Mugglecast, who surprise surprise we're going to have as a guest on our podcast sometime early next year. So excited about that. Can't wait to talk to Eric. And they read the first and the last chapter of Sorcerer's Stone and found parallels, and it was super interesting. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Ooh.
Go listen. So for me, I watched Wonder Woman 1984 on HBO Max on Friday on Christmas when it was released. And I personally thought it was wonderful. I was surprised to hear that a lot of critics and fans actually had a different opinion after having watched it. Not a lot of people liked it. I liked it a lot. I thought it was a really good women empowerment, I love seeing a woman who is strong and stands up for what she believes in, and and love doesn't run her life. She's able to be just as strong with or without a partner. It was just really I thoroughly enjoyed the themes and getting to see that all play out on screen. And then I also started watching Bridgerton and finished it last night on Netflix. It's a new Shonda Rhimes show, Shondaland production. And my friend Rex, who is also a host on both Speak Beasty and Alohomora with Aureo, said it best when he aptly described Bridgerton as a Victorian era Gossip Girl, because that is exactly what it is. Uh, although they do tell you who quote unquote Gossip Girl, or in the show it's Lady Whistledown, is in the last episode. So if there is going to be a season 2, they've already told us who it is. But I also have to say I love the string quartet covers that they do of popular modern songs, and they like dance to them at the balls and stuff like that. It's fun to hear. Like in the first episode, they do like a rendition of "Thank You Next" from Ariana Grande, and it's like all strings, and it's just so cool.
Yeah, I've also been watching Bridgerton, and I love it. And have been trying to go through Spotify trying to find the official soundtrack playlist, because so many people have already made Bridgerton playlists. So thank you to those of you people who, because I now can't find the real one. But I also like that so many Black, Indigenous, and people of color who are authors of historical romance in period pieces, or who follow the social commentary and the hierarchy in the UK, are helping us here in America understand the connections between Queen Charlotte and Duchess Meghan Markle. There's actually been a lot of spark of debate about whether or not Queen Charlotte was of mixed heritage, but it seems as if she was, considering the fact that just off of portrait evidence, as well as having several areas throughout the world named after her that are basically inherently Black, such as Charlotte, North Carolina, because there were lots of people that were like, "What's NC? I have no idea what that is." Stands for North Carolina. It's one of the 50 states. Also, keeping my ears on a new podcast from some friends of mine called Reclaiming Jane. Speaking of period pieces and historical romance, which is an anthropological and not quite literary analysis of, because my friend Lauren is a avid English major. She's one of my favorite English majors in the whole wide world. Analysis of Jane Austen's work. The first episode premiered December 16th, and this Wednesday, episode 2 comes out. So if you can take a listen at Reclaiming Jane, I won't think that you'll regret it.
Sounds awesome. I'm excited for that.
I love Jane Austen, and plus, I'm like, I wanted to binge watch Bridgerton, but like, I've felt myself like falling asleep and like going back and like replaying parts, and I was like, okay, I'm not paying as much attention as I was at first. So now I'm going back to watch the later episodes later on this week. But
Yeah, it's I finished it in like what 2 days, 3 days, but yeah, it probably would work good. It work well as a long watch instead of a binge. But I will say, ooh, the Duke is fine. He is so fine.
oh yeah, he's so fine. Yeah, and of course Shonda like puts her like shady spin on all the things. So it's just great writing. Of course, as I said before, great soundtrack. I have not gotten to who Lady Whistledown is, so no spoilers.
No, it's literally like the last scene of the last episode. So you got some time.
Okay,
You got some time.
great. Good, because I'm very much like Eloise, where I'm sitting here trying to guess, and
Yeah.
like I've
Yeah,
got a list, and I'm like needling down. I'm like, okay,
Yep, Rex finished it all on Friday when it came out. He watched all 8 episodes, and so I had been texting him throughout the entire time like, "Oh, I think it's this person. Oh, now I think it's this person. I think it's," and so he was like, "I'm not telling you." I'm like, "Good, don't tell me. I just like want to be able to guess." Uh,
Absolutely.
well, that's it for today's episode. Join us next time to talk about Chapter 18 of Order of the Phoenix, entitled Dumbledore's Army.
Ooh.
Yeah, excited. As per usual, you can find us online everywhere at Accio Politics and at AccioPolitics.com. You can support our podcast with becoming a patron and get physical goodies every 3 months for $5 a month at patreon.com/AccioPolitics.
Leave us a voicemail at 915-996-1699 with all your burning thoughts and questions. And if you're feeling shy, you can also email us at acciopolitics@gmail.com.
Until then, politics managed. Keep safe and keep faith. Good night.
Hey guys, Helene here with a little after hours announcement. I am so sorry, but it looks like we had a technical difficulty with this week's Patreon content. Looks like Aureo's microphone had some issues, and unfortunately, it stopped recording about maybe 10 minutes into our Patreon segment. I know that this sucks. I'm so sorry. We had such a good segment for you guys, but we promise we're going to get Aureo back and we're going to record again and get that segment out for you as soon as possible. We're not going to have a Patreon segment for you this week, but just hold on because we're going to get this segment out to you as soon as we possibly can. We're working on it right now. We're going to be talking about the Politics of the Fantastic Beasts series. You know, we talked all about Grindelwald and his comparisons to Hitler, and it was a really good discussion, but sadly none of it got recorded. Don't worry, we're going to get that segment up for you soon. So hold tight, and we'll talk to you soon.